eminent leaders on the dais, a very august gathering which has come here to discuss the very critical article in the Constitution, Article 370, which has repeatedly been in public discourse but never really caught the essentials so that the Indian citizens are well informed. I first of all thank the Shama Prasad Mukherjee Research Center for having chosen to call me to speak on this. And any meeting which speaks on this Jammu Kashmir related issues, I would think will not really be doing its job very well unless we do start with paying a respectful homage to Sri Shama Prasad Mukherjee, who actually sacrificed his life to keep Jammu and Kashmir as an integral part of India. So I would certainly do that with my humblest and sincere, heartfelt dedication. Similarly, the contribution made by Pandit Premnath Dogra cannot be forgotten. There have been several such eminent people who I may not be able to recall one on one, but certainly others who have been martyred in the cause, who have received Paramveer Chakras or Mahavir Chakras, such as Major Somnath Sharma, Brigadier Rajendra Singh, Colonel Rinchen, and Makbul Sherwani. I would like to definitely remember all of them much before I say a few words on this Article 370, which has given place to a lot of confusion, a lot of grey areas, some of which have been deliberately put on public discourse. I think it's time, and I'm very grateful indeed, in fact, to Sri Narendra Modi, who has raised this issue all over again. Of course, it has been in public discourse earlier, but I think at this time to have raised it in such a way in Jammu has actually given us the opportunity to see what the actual black and white truth behind this article is. I would only be stating some of the facts because it gives the backdrop for what I would want to place in front of you as opinions. Article 370, as you all know, was adopted in October 1949 by the Indian Parliament, and it appears under Part 21, which broadly categorizes all those articles which can be called as temporary, called as transitional, and called as special provisions. And this conveniently, many people would say, oh, because it is there, therefore it is a special provision. But let's underline the fact that even as it was put under this 21, it was termed as temporary provision and not under the special provision. So underline the fact that it comes under this broad umbrella category 21, under which you could also have special provisions, but the mention was made here that it was a temporary provision and not a special provision. So even from the very beginning, there is no issue of confusion here in the minds of the constitution makers while the Parliament adopted it or even subsequently. But it suited some people to say that it is a special provision, and therefore they kept the cloud hanging on it, as it were. Then actually speaking, what then it is? Article 370 is certainly a procedural mechanism, a temporary mechanism, which would help us to have an easier, greater and smoother integration of Jammu and Kashmir into the rest of the country, as it were. Now, if that is the case, there were quite a few discussions, and one of which I straight away want to link with the previous speaker, when he said, well, this provision can be removed, provision doubtfully can be removed, cannot be removed. All these discussions he put aside by saying that there are ways in which you can remove it. I would just broadly recall the discussion which happened both by during Jawaharlal Nehru's time in the Parliament and also during Gulzar Nanda's time as Prime Minister. 63 November, Jawaharlal Nehru had said, and the much repeated line, that it is going to get eroded, gradually eroded, and it shall erode finally completely. That is repeated. Similarly, Gulzar Nanda, as Prime Minister, had said in 64 December that it is possible to remove Article 370. Amendment and other things are too much of a confusion, but it is possible to remove through a presidential order, through an executive order. He has used these two words. It's possible to remove it. And if a Prime Minister had said that, it is a matter which we can seriously take on board and not go on getting ourselves into this whole big rigmarole about can it be, can it not be. There have been parliamentary statements made to this effect, and therefore I think, while not trivializing this debate, I also would want to say that there are avenues constitutionally provided, as our previous speaker said, to possibly consider whether this can be, withering away and can allow it to wither away completely. Now, while saying all this, Nanda also had, the former Prime Minister Nandaji had already said that it is a tunnel-like provision through which a lot of things can pass. A lot of articles can pass, a lot of laws can be passed, and it is passing. He had observed this. Whilst he had observed that, then probably a lot of things have passed and did get passed through. But what we have to today look into it for is the fact that that tunnel has gotten narrower and narrower, that many of the articles are actually not reaching any longer. In 1964, if that observation was made by the Prime Minister, that it was like a tunnel through which a lot of things were moving and flowing into Jammu and Kashmir, unfortunately today, on a rough estimate, nearly 130 articles of the Constitution has not reached Jammu and Kashmir. So that tunnel itself has got so narrowed, it has been constricted. There is probably a group, a vested interest group, which probably benefits by constricting this tunnel further and further, that several legislations, provisions of the constitutions which can benefit the people of Jammu and Kashmir is not just getting through. So I have given you a random, but yes, right figure of 130, it could be even more. So if that tunnel is getting constricted, is it helping in integration? Is it getting better, or is it worsening the situation? So if Jawaharlal Nehru had said that it would gradually erode, I'm wondering today, is it not necessary therefore for us, if it is getting constricted, is it not necessary for us therefore to say whether it is really, its continuation is really helping the situation, or is it aggravating the gulf? Some of the examples of the 130 that I'm telling you about are the Article 73rd and 74th amendments to the Constitution, which gives Panchayati Raj the provision, which I think all of us have heard. There are nearly 30,000 odd panchayats, if my figures are 33,000 odd elected panchayat and sarpanch members. And if the provisions were promised in the Congress's manifesto of 2002 and 2008, what has stopped the Congress from bringing the amendment 73rd and 74th fully into force in Jammu and Kashmir? So it's one thing for the Congress to repeatedly say, don't you please talk about Article 370, we know what it conveys. I would want to ask of them as to why exactly, if Article 370 was expected to get eroded, what stopped them from effectively using it for greater integration? This is a classic example of what Sri Rajiv Gandhi thought was very sacred and therefore brought this Panchayati Raj amendments to the Constitution. Itself is suffering under Rahul Gandhi and Srimati Sonia Gandhi. I don't think the Congress party is committed itself to even fulfill many of its own flagship programs in Jammu and Kashmir. Even worse is the question of the amendment which Mrs. Indira Gandhi brought in the Constitution. The secular word secular does not apply in Jammu and Kashmir. If it does not apply, and if I want to talk about the misuse of Article 370, I would first of all say, drawing a tenuous link, look at the way in which properties of people who have left Jammu and Kashmir, who have been thrown out of Jammu and Kashmir, is being continuously damaged, confiscated, occupied, or even completely removed. Temples are being destroyed. No guarantee is being provided for the properties of people who have already left the state. And if it is not secular, it suits not to answer questions related to the minorities in Jammu and Kashmir. So I think, in a way, it suits, and the selective application or selective misuse of Article 370 can be explained in very many different ways. Now, selective is again when in 1976, during the emergency, the 42nd Amendment Act brought in an extended term for the assemblies. The 5-year term of Jammu and Kashmir Assembly was extended to become 6 years. Well, after that, the amendment, 44th Amendment came into play after Congress was thrown out after the emergency days. Then most of these extensions offered to the assemblies were all brought back to being 5 years again. Opportune moment was taken by Sheikh Abdullah's government at that time during emergency to also extend this application of 5 to 6 year term to Jammu and Kashmir Assembly and made it into 6 years, that till today, in spite of, notwithstanding Article 44, amendment to the Constitution, 44th Amendment, the 6-year term has not been reduced to 5. So, the selective nature with which many things are being done in Jammu and Kashmir using Article 370 can be exemplified with very many such examples. Now, the extension or tunneling of acts into Jammu and Kashmir using Article 370, misusing Article 370 has affected, as I said, the Panchayati Acts moving to Jammu and Kashmir. Secular word doesn't apply to them. Similarly, Prevention of Corruption Act does not apply to them. Therefore, you find that in spite of the Controller and Auditor General repeatedly saying institutional corruption has gone uncorrected in Jammu and Kashmir, that's what is said in the CAG's 2010-11 report. No one is able to do much at all because without the PCA, Prevention of Corruption Act, you're not going to be able to pull up those people who misused funds in J&K. Now, OBC reservation is another very important development in India, which should have actually reached Jammu and Kashmir. That's not reached, thereby affecting Gujars, Paharis, and very many other communities, even Shias and Sikhs. And therefore, the progressive legislations which are made in our country so that many people who have been socially and otherwise backward can also benefit and come forward speedily in the development process are not reaching out to Jammu and Kashmir. And in this, the SC and ST Atrocities Prevention Act is another very vital, absolutely vital legislation of the country which has not reached Jammu and Kashmir. Again, in the garb of we have the special status under Article 370, which is absolutely misusing and leading to a situation of confusion. I think again the speaker before me was rightly referring to the amendment which was made to Article 35, and by insertion of Article 35A into the Constitution, which was not done through a proper procedure. It was brought in as though with the consent of Jammu and Kashmir Assembly, but brought in and through a presidential order. If that is acceptable, why not consider through a presidential order and an executive order the withdrawal of Article 370? That is acceptable to insert a clause into our Constitution, but not acceptable to have a presidential order to withdraw. Therefore, there are quite a few things which are happening in Jammu and Kashmir which are denying the citizens of J&K all the equality and the rights which are otherwise provided under Article 14 or 15 of the Constitution, only because constantly 370 is invoked and invoked for such purposes. And the much talked about, much touted by the Congress, Right to Information Act. That itself has gone through so many amendments. Every time there is a new chief minister, amendment has been made. 3 times, 3 different versions of RTI have been brought in. Again, because we can do whatever with the constitutionally approved, parliamentarily passed acts. And this has made RTI an expensive affair in Jammu and Kashmir, therefore denying people right to information on particularly very critical issues which affect their general well-being and also effective governance. I would only want to say that it is not just the BJP or those sympathetic to us who are talking about misuse of Article 370. Dr. Javed Rahi, who takes care of the tribal issues related movements in Jammu and Kashmir, has himself said We are not against the article. We are not against this article. But this article is against us. And if he said that, it's because he, as somebody who's taking up the interests of the tribals, has realized that this particular article has been misused, and clearly because of the misuse, those rights which have to reach people like the tribals and the scheduled castes are being denied. What about the others? Regional disparities are also growing. The Representation of Peoples Act and the Delimitation Act, through which representation of your presence in the assembly or in the parliament is determined, has been denied. As a result, many important regions of Jammu and Kashmir today do not have adequate representation in the assemblies. The delimitation has been so done that actually those who need the representation are not getting. I wouldn't want to expand on much more on this. There are more qualified speakers waiting and my time is running out. But I'm very grateful for the organizers of this evening for having called me to give my 2 pence worth talk for you. Thank you very much.